This is you. You're an applicant. You applied to Waterloo Architecture. You can only be placed into one of these three categories: rejected, waitlisted, accepted. Your minimal goal, right, is to be waitlisted, and the ultimate goal is to be accepted. So, how do you get there? I've made multiple videos that outline exactly what you need to do, and now that I've been on the interview panel and I've actually gone through the process as an interviewer in meeting applicants, ranking them per se in one of these three categories, this is probably the most definitive video and source of information you'll find out there in terms of the application process. And while I will say the process has its flaws, anything that has to do with people reviewing other people and then the category of art itself is always a very, very subjective topic, and it's very easily influenced. But this is what the school does. These are their rules. You got to play by it. So let's break it down. I'm not going to spoon feed you everything, but I will teach you the most organized methodology you should be thinking about when you go through an interview. Okay, so when in an interview, what you need to do is demonstrate good character, and that includes responsibility, maturity, etc., excellent technical skills, because at the end of the day, it's still an art portfolio. You're still relying on the bulk of your interview to revolve around your skill, your basic foundational techniques as an artist, right? At the end of the day, it's still, we're lining up portfolios side by side and picking the cream of the crop. Then you also need to demonstrate creative, intuitive, exploratory thought processes. So a good deep understanding into what themes you're exploring in your pieces. Then you need to demonstrate that you have a clear goal in mind, that you know what you're doing here. And then the last thing you need to demonstrate is a willingness to learn. I've also outlined what you should not do in my previous videos, so I'm not going to be repeating those in this video. This is what your interview process looks like. So we first start with the introduction, 5 minutes. Your overall interview process is around half an hour in length. So this is how we're breaking it down. 5 minutes of introduction, 20 minutes of presentation, and around 5 minutes of concluding remarks. In your introduction, your main goal, during each of these phases, you have one main goal. Just stick with that. Stick to focusing on one main goal, or else you're going to overwhelm yourself, right? A lot of people, it's already a stressful enough situation to be in, being interviewed. So during the introduction phase, your main goal is to just capture attention. Unless you are, and even if you are the first person to ever been interviewed, right, throughout the whole process of that term, you still need to capture the attention and become memorable, right? The more attention you can bring to yourself, good attention you can bring to yourself, the better of an opinion that we can form about you, and that helps you within our final judgments of where to rank you. So your main goal is to capture attention. The first step in the process is you come in. The clock starts ticking as soon as you step foot in the door, even before you step foot in the door. The clock starts ticking the moment the last person leaves and your time slot is supposed to start. So when you come in, there's a table. Now this is in person. There's a table. You're bringing your physical pieces and setting them up. So are you properly prepared? What does properly prepared mean? Properly prepared means you're not bringing an excessive amount of material, right? Because you're only bringing the key pieces that you want to highlight, your strongest pieces you want to highlight. Don't bring everything, and also don't bring anything repetitive unless it's in a series. So if you have one tiny model and you have like 5 other tiny models similar to that, maybe don't bring all the 5, maybe just bring 3, okay? Are you properly prepared? Again, the clock starts ticking. So during the setup time, are you spending an overwhelming amount of time just taking things out of the packaging. Like a lot of people bring their art in plastic bags. Are you spending too much time on that? Because every single minute counts. One last thing. First of all, of course, you need to bring your pieces, right? If you don't even bring your pieces and you're like, oh, I forgot them in my car, that's like, what are you doing? Second, make sure that everything comes intact. There have been multiple incidences where people would bring something, stuff it in a bag, take it out, and it's like broken. Just like bring your things. Like, do everything in your power to bring your pieces in intact. Okay, once we get to there, you're going to introduce yourself. We're going to introduce ourselves to you, right? You're going to have 2 professors and then 1 or 2 students. So we're going to introduce ourselves. You're going to introduce yourself to us. What we're looking for is, are you confident, right? Confidence comes in a variety of ways. It's different for everyone, but are you confident? How is your posture? Now we're not judging you, right, based on any body expressions, but it is a big indicator of how you feel in the moment. Straight back, good posture, you're ready to go. If you're slouched and you're hunched the whole time, I start to feel nervous for you. I'm like, are you really that nervous? Like, please calm down, and don't be sluggish, right? Dress code. Please come. Okay, I've mentioned this multiple times before. Come well dressed. Well dressed. First impressions. These are your first impressions. Make sure everything about yourself is nicely propered up. And smile. Like, when people come in, the interviewers, us, we're trying to smile the most we can. We're trying to be friendly. We're not trying to intimidate you, right? We're trying to make it a welcoming environment. So if you're able to calm down, you're able to smile, even if you're stressed, just force a smile, right? That makes you much more personable to us. So at the end of this, what we're able to judge is good character. And again, that's one of our first points of things you need to demonstrate. Then we immediately start into the presentation phase. And what the presentation phase is, you're trying to display your skills and then the philosophy behind your arts. So what this entails, again, is technical ability, strong foundations, artistic exploration, and smart selection. And I've briefly just talked about all of those. Are you a good artist? Are you exploring multiple mediums? You can be, unless you're insanely good at one medium, you should be demonstrating that you are adept at multiple mediums, or at least have given it a very good shot. And are you giving us a smart selection of your pieces? Don't bring architecture related things. Perspective drawings, okay. Perspective drawings, I wouldn't, they're just like a meh thing, but don't bring architectural models that you're not sure are fantastic pieces of architecture. You are sitting in front of people who know architecture. You're sitting in front of professors who have done this all their life. You're sitting in front of students who are pretty well taught in architecture. And if you come with a silly little model of yours, doesn't matter if it's as well thought out as you think it is, in our eyes it's always going to be novice. So don't bring it, because then we have the capability to assess and judge that with more critical thought than any other piece. So don't bring architectural models. You're here to learn architecture. You're not here to prove that you already know something about architecture. You're here to prove that you can be taught architecture. So, first thing in this step, you're demonstrating technical skill. And then the next thing that comes up is we're going to ask you to explain the thought process, the reasoning behind each piece, right? You're giving us a presentation. So, what distinguishes a strong applicant from a weak applicant is a strong applicant always has at least 3 reasons why they made a choice to draw this or do this with the medium or to explore this idea. A weak applicant will say, oh, I drew it because it was cool. Oh, I drew it because I like the landscape. Oh, I drew it because my mom asked me to. Right? Next up is personal initiative. People who spend time creating pieces for their portfolio outside of schoolwork will always have an advantage of those who are only presenting to us pieces that they did for school. Because you need to show the personal initiative that you yourself are interested in art, that you can make the time for yourself to be invested in art, and that it's not just a piece of homework. And then the last part of it is you need to have good representational abilities. Even if you're not strong in a medium, you need to be able to tell us, this is why I chose this medium, even though I'm not strong in it, right? That doesn't mean you come up with like a shitty watercolor painting and be like, I've never tried watercolor before, so I wanted to explore watercolor. This was my first attempt. We don't give a goddamn what your first attempt was. We want to see the good art. And that, again, that goes back to the smart selection. Are you showing us your best pieces because you want to make the best impression? Then is themes. The most impressive portfolio I saw had an incredible depth of research into the ideas. And what you would want to show, especially for an architecture interview, is that you are able to dive into a topic and research the living hell out of the topic as you can, beyond the surface level things, right? And then think of an intuitive way to represent those themes instead of just a very surface level representation. Do some research. Make sure your pieces are strong, not only in the visual, but also in the reasoning behind them. So here, what you are demonstrating is your intuitive thinking. We want good thinkers. We want researchers. And then to end it off, you're justifying, if you know what you're doing, right? Each piece needs to have a good intent behind them. Focusing on the pros versus the cons. Okay. Don't come in, show us a really good piece, and then talk about the cons about it. If we don't know what's wrong with it, we wouldn't assume anything's wrong with it, right? Don't point out any flaws in your piece. You can point out what you've learned from it. That's a good way of phrasing, right? You made mistakes and you learned from it. But don't straight up say, oh, I made this mistake, or this is a con of it. Just don't point that out. Why would you point out the weaknesses in your piece when we don't know and we see a very strong piece? So by this point, the interviewer has formed a cognitive decision already on how they should place you. This cognitive decision needs to be reinforced, and you need to either convince them that you're better than that, or to just hold them in that decision and make sure and hope that they don't, change their mind and decrease you to somewhere else. So that's where the conclusion comes in. Again, the conclusion is really fast. You need to take advantage of all the time you have. So your main goal here is to convince them that you are worthy of being accepted and that you are a student that would fit into Waterloo. So the conclusion is the time where we're going to ask you questions. We're going to definitely ask you, why architecture? Why Waterloo? Right? I was sitting there, and every time we asked people this question, there would only be one of two responses. Be like, why architecture? Oh, because I love art and engineering. Because I want to find a balance of art and engineering. Because I love drawing and I also love math. Being predictable is not an advantage. Being predictable is I'm in my brain, I'm eye rolling. You should already be aware that there are thousands, multiple other candidates who are being interviewed. This is an opportunity for you to make yourself distinct from them. But if you're giving a generic answer, then I kind of, in my mind, I group you with like everyone else. You're not special. If you have a personal reason why you want to do architecture, say it. If you have a personal reason why you want to attend Waterloo, say it. And you need to understand and be cognizant of the fact that you have an advantage in knowing who your interviewers are beforehand, right? You get notified whose panel you're going to be on. So go on LinkedIn stalk them, find out who they are, what they do, what their role is in Waterloo, and what other schools they're teaching at. Because 9 out of 10, your professors, the professors at my school at Waterloo, also teach or partake in the programs at other universities, right? So be strong in your reasoning of why architecture, why Waterloo, because your interviewer is going to think, well, everything you say can also apply to TMU. Everything you say can also apply to U of T. Like, you're not giving them a strong enough reason why Waterloo. And then something to prepare is, a lot of the times they'll ask you an example of how architecture has influenced you. And this also goes back to the point of, do you know what you're doing? Do you know why you want to do architecture? Right? Some people just be like, I just want to try it out. There are only about 80 spots for acceptances. So why should we give it to you if you're just thinking, I want to try it out, versus someone who has more conviction in what they want to do, right? So anyways, here you need to demonstrate that you have a clear goal. You need to demonstrate that you know your shit. You need to provide good reasonings of why you want to do architecture, why at Waterloo. Okay, this last little bit here is we're definitely going to ask you if you have any questions for us. This is not the time for you to just shrug it off and be like, no, I don't have any other questions. This is the last couple minutes you get to make sure that you leave with a lasting impression. So, find trigger words. This comes from researching who your interviewers are beforehand, right? Ask them something about, maybe it's related to their line of research. Ask them what it's like to be an architect. Ask them what the career trajectory is. You have students there, right? So ask them what it's like to be a student, if there's anything you need to be aware of, right? Try to engage with your interviewers as much as possible, because this is your last opportunity to do so. And this is where we start to form the confirmation of the decision that we made before. So in this last step, you are demonstrating a willingness to learn about what it's like to be an architect, learn about what their experiences are, because you're stepping into this role, right? You're stepping into becoming an architecture student, then becoming an architect. So demonstrate that you are curious, you're willing to learn. So this is basically the entire process. There can be more to it, and it might not be as complicated as this. It's a case-by-case basis, but this is a good framework of what the interview process is like. So at the time of this video, I'm specifically recording it today because it would have been, I think, a week, maybe a little more than that, since people have gotten their acceptance offers or rejection offers. So hopefully this will help you understand why you were accepted, why you were rejected, what you can work on, etc. And now this video is also a resource for future applicants. And as I always say, I applaud those who take the initiative to research beforehand. Like, I feel like so much information is on the web now. I'm providing you with a lot of content. More people have been making vlogs about architecture school. More people in general have been making content about architecture school lately. So if you take your future seriously, if you take the application seriously, right, you should be doing your research. And if you had the initiative to do research, I feel like you would be incredibly well prepared to work towards an acceptance. So that is all for this video. If you liked it, consider liking, subscribing, up to you. I would really appreciate if you could do all that. Helps me out with the algorithm, and really working towards making higher quality content moving forward. I got a mic audio problem is finally fixed, but still working out some kinks. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.